I'm pleased to introduce Wayne White, who's our moderator tonight. Born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and raised primarily in the Kansas City metro area, Wayne has lived on small farms most of his adult life. He's lived with his wife, Sandra, on an 80-acre farm in Jefferson County, Kansas He lived in Jefferson County on an 80-acre farm for 31 years until 2022. They raise apples, pears, berries, firewood, timber, hay, and a variety of vegetables and herbs. Forest land health, high diversity native grassland mixtures, and land management practices that protect and enhance carbon sequestration and ecological diversity are his central interests. He owns and cares for forest lands in Ontario, Canada as well. Wayne has a PhD in sociology from Kansas State University and has taught sociology and political science and worked as a legislative lobbyist, grant writer, and program administrator. His book, Biosequestration and Ecological Diversity, Mitigating and Adapting to Climate Change and Environmental Degradation, was published by CRC Press in 2013. The book emphasizes the importance of protecting and enhancing intact ecosystems to sequester and store carbon. Dr. White is the vice president of the board of directors of the Kansas Forestry Association, which is a statewide nonprofit that works to expand and improve the health of Kansas woodlands. He's also a member of the Wind Energy Advisory Group of the Climate and Energy Project. We're so pleased to have you tonight, Wayne. Thank you so much for moderating our panels. I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. Sorry for jumping the gun there, folks. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to the forum. As Jenny indicated, we're going to start with questions for candidates for Douglas County Commission District 2, and I'd like to start with the incumbent Commissioner Shannon Reid. Shannon, please introduce yourself to our audience, and as part of your introduction, please share what experiences, education, and expertise help you to do your job in your current commissioner role.
Thanks very much, Wayne, and thanks Douglas County Democrats for putting on these weekly forums during what is a busy primary election season in our community. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Shannon Reid. I am your current Douglas County Commissioner for District 2. I was elected in 2020, and I came to this role because people in my community asked me to step up and run for office and bring the sort of advocacy and lived experience that I have in the community, both having grown up here and being an advocate and somebody who works in social services to the perspective of the county commission. So a little bit more about me and my background is I grew up in Lawrence my whole life. I went to New York and Broken Arrow Elementaries, Billy Mills, formerly South, junior high, and graduated from Lawrence High in 2003. And much of my education in junior high and high school was really focused around community engagement and community involvement and getting involved with service to my community. And that happened through a variety of ways. Some of them were academic classes, some of them were sort of social and extracurricular clubs. And that's really where that planted the seed for me in wanting to engage regularly with my community, learn more about the civic process, about local government, and how impactful local elections were on the issues that faced people of all ages and all demographics within a city and within a county. So the other piece of my education outside of the classroom is that I was on our newspaper staff throughout high school and the editor of the paper, and was class president for 2 years in high school. And so that gave me a lot of education and just collaborating with people and communicating through differences of opinions and ideas and perspectives. So those are some of the early seeds and how I came to be a commissioner. My career has been in nonprofits largely, with a little bit of retail and childcare and food service work peppered in there throughout my time in my 20s especially. But I've worked in nonprofits for going on 2 decades and have been at the Willow Domestic Violence Center since 2013, really helping build the court advocacy program there. And now I do policy-focused systemic coordination work amongst criminal justice stakeholders in Douglas County. and as it relates to issues of domestic violence, both for victims and offenders, navigating those processes and trying to seek more safety. So I come to being a commissioner from a space of really working with a lot of people and having my own lived experiences of struggle and adversity, violence and poverty and mental illness and substance abuse. All of those things are part of my childhood growing up here and something that I work through issues with people daily about in my social work job, if you will. And I think that brings a lot of new perspective and a more dynamic way of thinking about how local governments work to take care of their citizens. So that's really the perspective that I work to put forward every day.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm sorry. I thought the timekeeper would talk about the time. That was a 2-minute question. And in a 1-minute follow-up, is there one aspect of your current term as commissioner, county or city, that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I was looking on the screen for a little bit of timekeeping. I think we didn't cover that housekeeping bit, but I'll try to mind that better. So one thing I'd like to highlight is that I'm a dynamic decision maker who really looks at issues systemically and within the broad context of community impact, always with equity top of mind. I do not have one specific agenda to pursue, and I've worked really hard since 2020 to be an elected person who is actively responsive to the varied needs that I see in our community at large. Much of my time as your District 2 commissioner has been focused on striving toward a healthier, safer, and more equitable existence for all residents who choose Douglas County as their home, because that's what I believe community looks like, and I believe in the power of community that really cares for each other. That takes a diversity of tactics to make progress on an aspiration like that, and I really intend to keep working diligently to consider a broad spectrum of impacts and implications and collaborations that work towards increased resource access, more purposeful investments, and a focus on harm reduction.
This next is a 2-part question. Please identify 3 critical issues facing Douglas County that need to be addressed in 1 minute, and then in 3 follow-up minutes of these 3 critical issues, please rank them in order of importance and explain what each issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Thanks, Wayne. I'm sorry about that. I was just looking back at notes. I thought we were alternating between candidates on the questions. Is that not what the format is?
That was not the format that was given to me.
Okay. I must have misunderstood. My apologies. Okay, so the quick part to the first part of the question, just to list the 3 issues that I think are facing Douglas County right now. That's public health, safety, and justice as one connected issue, fair resource access and allocation as another issue, and equitable and smart economic development as another issue. And those, as I just listed them, are how I decided to rank them. Although I am somebody who really believes that everything is very interconnected, and we have to think about decisions from a variety of angles. But I do think that there's some foundational prioritization that I am focused on as a number 1 critical issue, and that being public health, safety, and justice, which I think are also inextricably linked to the collective well-being of our community, and that yet remain out of reach for a lot of folks who live here for a lot of different reasons. The delivery of public health, safety, and justice services are truly a core function of county government, and thus they are a prioritized focus for me as a commissioner and through the lens through which I make a lot of decisions, really all of my decisions. In recent years, Douglas County has been actively participating in broad community work and helping to convene coordinated efforts focused on how to support all residents. We're actively working towards housing access alongside purposefully expanding.
Time is up.
Okay, I didn't know if we were doing. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I have a follow-up.
Okay.
What is your perspective on the balance of renewable energy needs and other land use considerations for Douglas County? 2 minutes.
So I think that there are a lot of dynamic issues to consider in that. I think that it really fits into one of the critical issues I mentioned: equitable and smart economic development, and that looks like balancing the land use development pressures that are within our county, which are plentiful, obviously, in our community, and renewable energy has been one of those development pressures. And I happen to believe that that our regulations in Douglas County that have been developed are really robust and strike a balance between inviting smart opportunity and economic growth to our tax base, our commercial tax base, and cleaner renewable utility production that can benefit our community as well directly. And I think that our regulations have really done a good job at striking a balance, at putting robust restrictions on the way that those projects can and should be developed in order to mitigate harm, and how we should look towards increasing dual or multi-use of land in order to help restore health to that land, and hopefully increase the carbon sequestration, the potential for groundwater consumption and retention within the ground there by planting of vegetative grass of native vegetation there, and allowing access for different small agricultural producers, allowing them access to land in a more creative way, in a dual use opportunity through agrivoltaics, where both agricultural use and energy resource production can occur at the same time.
Thank you. Tell us about District 2. What are your district's needs and concerns, and how do you balance district and countywide concerns? 2 minutes.
So during my conversations with many of the residents I've met across District 2 and beyond, I've listened to concerns about issues surrounding local homelessness encampments and the lack of adequate resources for vulnerable, unsheltered neighbors. I've discussed the state of local township roads and fire and EMS service across our unincorporated areas. And I've also learned a lot from District 2 about their varied perspectives on major land use issues, infrastructure development, environmental concerns, and the county's climate action efforts. Of course, a relevant District 2 conversation currently is the proposed and preliminarily approved utility scale solar project in Grant Township. Such a large and new land use proposition in our community has really illuminated a complex web of competing values and nuanced facts that are perceived quite differently by way of whatever your position to the project may be. I think it's actually a pretty good example of how I work as a commissioner to balance District 2 and countywide concerns, plus opportunities that I see available. Notably, many neighbors and area residents are in opposition or concerned about a project that would develop an allowable conditional land use in our county for the production and transmission of renewable solar energy. I acknowledge that there's a sense of fear, loss, and grief associated with this. And for some of my constituents, it also represents progress, opportunity, and responsible growth for others. If it is developed, the project could contribute meaningful increase to our commercial tax base over time, which is one way to help relieve our outsized reliance on residential property tax, something that has a direct benefit to residents across the whole of the county. And it could create lots more opportunities for more residents as well, but that's just one example. I do hear from residents across Douglas County about issues that span districts and that do not function solely within district boundaries. And I'm really focused on making decisions that I think benefit the whole of the community, which is really representative of the work that county government does every day.
Thank you. Time. The primary election involves voters needing to choose between deserving Democratic candidates who frequently have similarity in their positions and priorities. What distinguishes you from the other candidate? 1 minute.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
On the surface, I can see how many local voters do see similarities between the positions and priorities of City Commissioner Larson and myself. However, I do think that there are plenty of contrasts between us in terms of values and approach. While Lisa has been proposing a pretty simplistic rollback of the property tax mill levy that she asserts we put too much money into our fund balance at the county from, I'm here to tell you that I think that's what responsible and even conservative financial stewardship looks like. And I don't apologize for that. I think that our county government functions really well with a fund balance that allows us to have savings on hand for capital improvement projects that we can pay for cash and not use debt service for. And our fund balance policy is representative of that. I also think it's worth noting that the Douglas County Commission has rolled back our mill levy the last 2 years. And through consensus building on the current Douglas County Commission, I've worked really hard to balance the need of meeting service expectations for residents across Douglas County in a variety of sectors and recognizing that there's an increased burden.
One final question. Why are you asking for our votes?
As we transition from 3 seats to 5 seats on the county commission, I really do think that some continuity with current county commissioner who has been working on many of the current initiatives as it relates to crisis intervention services, a criminal justice coordinating council, a place for everyone, and a work to end chronic homelessness and increase affordable housing. That continuity of a commissioner who has really been leading the charge in those spaces is important to continue the work and maintain the momentum that has really been built up around coordinated community action between local government partners, social service providers, emergency services, and others, and the private sector included in that. And so I really wish to continue that work and think that I bring a perspective to county government that is representative of a lot of voices in our community that do not necessarily feel seen or represented elsewhere in our elected governments.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, we'll go to you, Lisa. You're muted.
There you go. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. So again, thanks for holding this forum tonight and all the work that the Dems have put into this primary season and making sure it gets off to a good start, as well as having a success at the end. So my name is Lisa Larson, and I've been Lawrence City Commissioner for more than 8 years. I've served as mayor of Lawrence for 2 terms. My degree is from Fort Hays State University in geology. And in 1992, I started an environmental consulting firm and sold it 22 years later in 2014. Our focus was investigating and cleaning up contaminated soil and groundwater. I'm currently a mediator who works with youth offenders and victims, as well as eviction prevention. In 2021, I was part of a group of mediators that started a Center for Conflict Resolution called Building Peace. We currently have MOUs with the district attorney's office, as well as the school district, to work with youth offenders and their victims in a restorative justice setting. This is a victim-centered process that holds the offender accountable directly to the victim and provides an opportunity to the offender to have all charges dropped. The idea is to restore justice to the victim as much as possible and to break that school to prison pipeline. We also have an MOU with the Douglas County Housing Stabilization Collaborative to work with tenants and landlords in an effort to prevent eviction.
Is there one aspect of your current term as commissioner, county or city, that you would like to highlight?
You know there is. And I believe it would be the intentional building of our capital improvement plan, also known as the CIP. Now, cities are responsible for building and maintaining all infrastructure. This includes utilities, good water quality, waste streams, parks, and much, much more. These priorities are typically detailed in a 5-year CIP. So when I came onto the commission in 2015, we had a 1-year CIP that proposed investing $53 million on 20 projects in 2016. There was no projections in the budget document for future investment into our infrastructure. And during my time on the commission, I worked with other commissioners to build and expand our CIP to include a 5-year projection of needs and how they would be funded. Our 2025 CIP includes 57 capital projects with funding for $172 million, over 3 times what we invested in 2016. And our current 5-year CIP includes $528 million of infrastructure needs. Each year, we've continued to hone our CIP to build and maintain our infrastructure. This is work that I'm very proud of.
Thank you. Please identify 3 critical issues facing Douglas County that need to be addressed in 1 minute, and then in 3 more minutes of these 3 critical issues, please rank them in order of importance and explain what issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Yeah, I think the 3 issues, one is property taxes. I just believe they're just too dang high. Number 2, financial transparency in our fund balance policy. It seems as though we've lost sight of the fundamental duty to inform the public of why and what the plans are for all the surplus dollars that are being transferred over into reserve funds when no property tax relief has been given. And then the third item would be implementation of our comprehensive plan processes and land use. Proposed land use issues should be viewed through the lens of a community developed comprehensive plan. And so I'll go back to start with property taxes. And again, it's hard to I think, to say one is more important than the other, because I think we can address all of these. These are critical issues. We can do more than one thing at one time, and these need their immediate attention, I think. So back to property taxes, we are being taxed. I believe we're being taxed beyond the legitimate needs of funding our government. This is evident in the amount of money that is being transferred every year from budget to unbudgeted funds without any property tax relief. The property tax issue could be incrementally addressed right now. During the 2025 budget deliberations, I would challenge our current county commissioners to lower the property taxes in the 2025 budget. And I also challenge each commission candidate to pledge to address the budget surpluses and commit to lowering property taxes. And on to financial transparency in the fund balance. In recent years, our county government has transferred over $100 million out of the budget that they say is not needed to fund our government in a given year. These are being transferred from budgeted to unbudgeted reserve funds. I believe at least some of these funds could be used for property tax relief. And the county commissioners have not provided a plan for the excess of dollars, why this is being done, nor why they don't want to use it for property tax relief. Our fund balance policy allows this to occur. I believe this is wrong. Our fund balance policy must be changed to reflect the values of our community. And I believe also that the fund balance policy and transparency issues can be discussed by the commission with instruction given to staff to bring back proposals to modify the fund balance policy that actually reflects the values of our community. And this should be done with the new 5-seat commission. And the final item, which is our comprehensive plan, during the last few years, there's been an increased interest in building renewable energy infrastructure in our county. This is actually a very good thing. However, the current development of these plans and regulation has not followed a process as is detailed in our comprehensive plan for 2040. The comp plan is stated as being our foundation as well as our framework for land use. So I believe any proposed land use issues should be viewed through the lens of this plan. So when a new development idea or innovation for land use is proposed, then the comp plan states that a public amendment process should be initiated. Our comp plan does not address any land use in relation to large-scale alternative energy projects. For our county, this is a new development idea and should be part of an amendment to our comp plan and then proceed with implementation if it passes.
Since you mentioned renewable energy and land use, I won't ask that same question, but would you like to elaborate on that issue at all?
Well, I think I've tried to lay it out as clearly, and I hope that I've done that to the degree that is necessary. But I truly do believe that all of our land use issues should be addressed through our comp plan first. And if an amendment needs to be done, that's fine. Amendments are important. In fact, the current comp plan has had over 6 amendments today. Our last comp plan, 2020, had over 50, I think it was 57 different amendments. So it's typical and needed to have these amendments. But we should do this before we follow through with any large scale, different type of development that we're used to.
Thank you. Please tell us about District 2. What are your district's needs and concerns, and how do you balance district and county-wide concerns?
You know, District 2, my district, contains some of the oldest parts of our county. From Grant Township, that was formed, I believe, in the late 1800s, to North Lawrence, where some claim that Lawrence began. Now, we are the only district in Douglas County that doesn't contain an incorporated town in the rural part of the district. We are the heart of Quantrell's Reid in our downtown district. We have the oldest neighborhoods from North Lawrence, East Lawrence, Oriad, Owl, West Hills, as well as Pinckney. I believe that our district is the soul for Lawrence's history as well as the heart. And when I speak to community members in the 2nd district, I hear some very similar thoughts. One is that property taxes are almost out of reach for many, especially those on a fixed income and younger families. That they want government that is financially responsive and open to the needs of the community. And they want a government that honors their voices when collectively spoken. Now, as far as balancing the needs of my district with countywide concerns, I think the first thing we need to do as commissioners, and this is what I practice as a city commissioner, is to listen more and talk less. It's been my experience that people will tell you what balance means to them. By listening, you hear numerous perspectives that often overlap. And I use this information to find as much balance and common ground as possible to meet the needs of our entire county.
The primary election involves needing to choose between deserving Democratic candidates who frequently have similarity in their positions and priorities. What distinguishes you from the other candidate in this race?
You know, I believe that my extensive experience in government operations from a city commissioner's point of view, and from the life experiences as a former business owner that was in a highly regulated industry. I also believe that my science background is an advantage. My career extended 30 years in researching and understanding soil and groundwater properties. I've investigated, and I've remediated the impact of chemical use and misuse in our environment. I've seen climate change in action and the need to do what we can locally to address our part. Now, as a mediator in the area of restorative justice and eviction prevention, I bring experience of the successes I've seen by using restorative practices and healing victims to the extent possible, and holding offenders accountable and working to break the school to prison pipeline. I've seen the impact of eviction on families and use mediation to lessen that impact and keep people housed. I will use all of my skills and experience to provide good governance to our community.
And finally, why are you asking for our votes?
You know, I believe our county is at an inflection point. As mentioned, we're changing to a new 5-seat county commission. There's been a system of no change in how our finances have been handled in the past several years, even when the disparity has been publicly aired. There are transparency issues that aren't being addressed. There are questionable practices of leadership. If you want to see change, then ensuring the 5-seat commission includes 3 new commissioners sitting at that table has a better chance of implementing the needed change. I'm one of those 3 commissioners. I bring with me the depth of experience, the knowledge of budgeting and finances, and the belief in following process. I will use these skills to bring tax relief, transparency, and process to our county government. I do ask for your vote.
Thank you, Lisa. We are now going to move on to questions for the candidates in Senate District 19. House Representative Vic Miller, and ShaMecha King Simms. We're going to start with Vic Miller. And we'll ask all of the questions of you, Vic, and then move on to ShaMecha. Please introduce yourself to our audience, and please include information about what experience, education, and expertise you have that will help you do your job in the Kansas Senate. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Wayne. And thank you to the Douglas County Democrats for hosting this forum. And I want to say thank you to ShaMecha for participating. I've served before in the Kansas Senate for 2 years, so I understand the workings of that chamber. But in addition to that, I've served 6 terms in the Kansas House. The last 2 years, I've had the great privilege of leading the 40 Democrats across the state as the House Minority Leader. I hold degrees in business. My BS is in business. I have a JD from Washburn Law School. I'm a product of Shawnee County Schools, and I've represented portions of this district in my capacity as city councilman and county commissioner, as well as having the honor of serving as municipal judge here in Topeka.
This is a 2-part question. Please identify 3 critical issues facing the state of Kansas that the legislature needs to address in the next legislative session in 1 minute.
Well, that's a lot of time. 1 minute to talk about 3 critical issues.
And then 1 to identify the issues, and then 3 more minutes to elaborate, ranking them in importance, and explain why each issue, what each issue involves, and why you rank them as you did.
Well, in my first minute, I will list those 3 issues. Number 1, rising property taxes. Number 2, fixing our broken marijuana laws. And number 3, rewriting our school finance formula in light of the fact that the Supreme Court has now withdrawn their jurisdiction, and it will be up to the Kansas legislature to now address that issue anew.
So of these 3 issues, please rank them in order of importance and explain what issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Well, they're all important. They're all critical. As far as property taxes, the reason it's on my list is because we have had a tremendous shift in the last number of years of property taxes going from all other classes of property onto homes. In fact, when the classification amendment was passed in Kansas, 35% of the total taxes were paid by people who owned their homes. Now that's risen to 53% of total property taxes. When you knock on doors, no matter where you are in Kansas, as the commissioner noted in our previous forum, the number 1 issue people bring to the front is rising property taxes. That's why I authored on behalf of the House Democrats a 3-part plan that, if enacted, would have reduced our taxes by 17%. Number 2, fixing our broken marijuana laws. As I've said in the past, Kansas, for some reason, believes it has to be in a race for last, and it's ridiculous. We are spending too much money incarcerating, prosecuting offenders of marijuana laws, when in fact we should be collecting the revenues that our states to the west and to the east are currently doing from Kansas residents. And number 3, and again, I can't say which one of these is more important because they're all extremely important, but doing the right thing on rewriting our school finance formula is fundamental to providing the necessary funds to fund our K-12 schools, so we don't end up in court again with the Supreme Court finding that we are inadequately funding those schools.
Thank you. Please tell us about Senate District 19, and as part of this question, what are your district's needs and concerns?
The Kansas legislature has a reputation for drawing lines through reapportionment that make no sense at all. And the diversity between one end of this district and the other is remarkable. So it's very difficult to represent the diverse populations that represent the district. But I would note that there are two things unique to District 19 that our next senators should be focused on. One of which is higher education. Kansas University, Washburn University, both within this district, both are in need of constant attention to make sure we don't underfund those institutions and pass that responsibility onto the students that are trying to afford a college education. And number two, KU on the east and the Capitol on the west of the district represent a large percentage of state employees. More so probably than any district in Kansas, the next senator needs to be focused on taking care of our state employees, both the current and the retired. That means making sure that cost of living increases are due to our employees that are still employed, and that we give cost of living increases to our pensioners who are woefully lacking in terms of a decent retirement income. Tier 3 of the CAPER system has been a tragedy. It needs to be readdressed. We need to eliminate Tier 3 and allow those people who are currently in that tier to qualify for Tier 2 benefits so they can have a decent pension when the time comes for them to retire.
An important goal for Democrats is to break the supermajority Republicans now hold in the legislature. But regardless, there will still be major differences between the parties about what is best for Kansas. Is it possible to find common ground? How do you advance the issues you care about?
Well, it takes a lot of patience to work with our Republican friends. They come from the same state, but they think in a different universe. But I think I've had a pretty good track record in my years in the legislature. One of the first bills that was passed, and the only bill passed with a Democrat sponsor, was legislation to extend the grace period for how we count our mail-in ballots. That bill, with my name as the sponsor, was passed almost unanimously in the Kansas House. It became law. Every year since it was passed, the Republicans have tried to repeal it. And I have to brag a little bit. We now have approximately 30 to 35,000 votes that are counted every election, every general election, that wouldn't otherwise be counted without that legislation. I'm offered a number of amendments successfully, both on the floor of the House and in the various committees that I've served on. I've had Republicans, when I've been leader of the Kansas Democrats, I've had Republican legislators come to my office, confer with me about the problems they're having with their own leadership. So I think I have the respect of the other side. We don't necessarily agree. We often don't agree, but I think it's safe to say that I know how to get along and get things done, working the uphill battle that we have, being so outnumbered, we being Democrats, by the Republicans in both the House and the Senate.
What legislative issue are you most passionate about? What motivates and drives you to public service?
Well, that's a pretty easy one for me. And I've sort of alluded to a couple, high property taxes being one of my passions, but the one that I'd like to talk about in answer to this particular question is one that we worked on this year, and it had to do with the IDD waiting list. The waiting list for families who have a member of their family awaiting those very critical services to operate, to live independently out in the community. Some people have been on that waiting list for 10 years. It's risen to a number of over 5,000, and that is unacceptable. I led the fight. I was not the only one, but I was among a few people that led the fight to enhance the funding for that program to get people off the waiting list. We made some improvement, I'm happy to say, but we have a long way to go, and I will remain passionate as it relates to that issue. If you're not affected by it directly, you should look into it to see just how dramatically it does affect the quality of these people's lives.
The primary election involves voters needing to choose between deserving Democratic candidates who frequently have similarity in their positions and priorities. What distinguishes you from the other candidate?
Well, I'm the only one that has any experience in public service, holding a number of offices, but any time in the Kansas legislature. I'm familiar with the processes that are involved. They're not simple. I'm familiar with the people. They are complicated as well, and I'm familiar with the issues. I have the ability, I believe, to move past mere talking points and dig under the surface as it relates to the pros and cons of any and every issue. It is a place where you learn, and I've been happy to learn along the way while I've served here, and I feel very privileged to possess the knowledge that I pick up by being an active member of the Kansas legislature.
Why are you asking for our votes?
I'm ready to hit the ground running. With so few Democrats in the Kansas Senate, we can't afford to waste any of those precious seats to somebody who's there just to learn. We need to have someone who is outspoken, someone who's experienced, someone who can carry the day when we are up against odds that resemble 2-1. We're hoping to break the supermajority. I think that this is one seat that it's critical that we win. I have a proven record of winning seats, and I think picking up this one seat will move as a giant step forward in breaking the supermajority and giving the governor the last 2 years of a successful 8-year reign. I do appreciate, again, the opportunity to be on here, and I ask for the people of Douglas and Shawnee County to please cast their vote for Vic Miller.
Thank you, Vic.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from ShaMecha King Simms, our other candidate for Senate District 19. Hi, ShaMecha.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Please introduce yourself to our audience, and please include information about what experiences, education, and expertise you have that will help you do your job in the Kansas Senate.
So good evening, everyone. My name is ShaMecha King Simms, and yes, I am a candidate for Kansas Senate District 19. A little bit about me is that I have been living in the Old Town neighborhood of Topeka since 2011. I moved into this neighborhood with my young son, who was 3 at the time, and we have been here ever since. I professionally have worked in education since about 2009. Mostly as a substitute teacher in Topeka Public Schools, but I've also done some teaching abroad in China, and most recently have been teaching as a substitute in Auburn-Washburn School District and Lawrence Public Schools. Outside of that, I took some time during COVID to do an internship with the Episcopal Diocese of Kansas. This internship was called the St. Simon's Intern for Community Advocacy. And in that opportunity, I learned to work with organizations such as KIFA, Kansas Interfaith Action, and Loudlight, working at the Kansas legislature to try to move conversations forward in a multitude of issues ranging from reproductive health to transgender affirming care to economic justice for juveniles. Basically, what I bring to this table is a grassroots approach, the lived experience of having been an individual who has tried to make a life for themselves and their child in this district. And that is what I bring to the table.
This is a two-part question. Please identify 3 critical issues facing the state of Kansas that the legislature needs to address in the next legislative session. Identify those and then take 3 more minutes to rank them in order of importance and explain what each issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Okay, so just kind of following Leader Miller, I'm going to take a little bit of liberty to just kind of make this work so my brain can follow. Let me start by ranking, and then I will explain. So I started with reproductive rights as my #1 issue for the next session, followed by affordable housing, and then Medicaid expansion. So I'll just explain why those have been ranked in that manner. So with reproductive rights, this is a personal matter to me as a person who has a uterus, as a person who has experienced services ranging from giving birth to terminating a pregnancy. I understand the importance of maintaining bodily autonomy, and now we're seeing escalating issues with access to contraceptive care, access to IVF fertility treatments. And it's very clear that these issues are going to continue to proliferate as long as there are voices at the table who do not understand the intrinsic value of having someone who has lived experience, having a voice, bringing those issues to the forefront, especially as we're talking about higher incidences of infant and maternal death rates, particularly when it's involving women or individuals of color. These are issues that have been identified as social determinants of health, things that we as communities need to wrap our mind around how we are going to reduce the ill effects of these issues. So that is why reproductive rights is my #1. With affordable housing, this ties into my experience as a neighborhood improvement association leader. I'm currently sitting on the City of Topeka's Land Bank Trust, which was inaugurated last year. We have 3 years to get this off the ground. And the reason that I was brought to the table is that I bring the lived experience of someone who is on a fixed income, low income, and what does affordable housing mean to someone who is trying to live off of a very small income base? What does affordable housing look to someone who's been unhoused or someone who is incarcerated and trying to transition back into the societal space? And so as we're continuing to work with communities on what that particular issue looks like for them and how they want to approach it, we need the legislature to be supportive, and we need them to be responsive to each community's individual need. And as Leader Miller pointed out, District 19 has a wide variety of interests, I mean, ranging from urban to rural. And so it's going to look different depending on where you're talking about affordable housing being placed. But this needs to be an issue that we push to the forefront. It's just going to continue to be a concern, and especially as it regards to rehabilitating current housing that's unlivable and making sure we get the missing middle addressed, the missing middle of the housing addressed. And then with Medicaid expansion, we got so close and I was so excited. And I think we're getting closer to really moving that into the realm of getting it done. I'd like to be at the forefront of that conversation. I know that sitting next to people who are very passionate about the Medicaid expansion, it just got me more excited. And so I think that that is very close. And those are my 3 critical issues for the Kansas legislature in 2025.
Thank you. Please tell us about Senate District 19. And as part of this question, what are your district's needs and concerns?
Hey, so for me, the Senate District 19 story is about differences, disparities. We have a mix of households that are able to maintain their status of living, and then we have folks who have fallen through the cracks for a multitude of reasons and are just barely getting by. 67, according to the US Census, 67% of renters are cost burdened, while 33% of homeowners are cost burdened. Eviction rates are highest starting around the Tecumseh area and then moving west into Topeka specifically. People of color make up 40% of this population. And as such, the metrics, when you look at the social determinants of health, disproportionately affect people of color. So we're talking Black, we're talking Indigenous, we're talking Hispanic. Especially when you look at suicide rates, victims of violence, preventable diseases, those are all people of color that are most impacted. And then we have 11,000 individuals who are living with disabilities. And to Leader Miller's point about the importance of those getting those wait list numbers down so that individuals have the services and access that they need to live thriving lives. Senate District 19 is a microcosm of all the things that we want to be and the things that we have yet to address. And being able to tell that story, whether it's embodiment or through legislative action, is very critical for this district.
An important goal for Democrats is to break the supermajority that Republicans now hold in the legislature. But regardless, there will still be major differences between the parties about what is best for Kansas. Is it possible to find common ground? How can you advance the issues you care about?
I will say that in my experience, again, as a neighborhood improvement association leader, as a chair and vice chair of the Citizen Advisory Council, part of those roles are working with individuals who have very different experiences than you. Oftentimes, particularly when you're talking about the county, you're dealing with people who identify as Republicans. And despite those differences, we all come together with regard to how do we invest thoroughly in the lives of the people that we serve. So my approach is different. Leader Miller has pointed out his experience and his time serving and all the wonderful things that he has done. My approach is very much relational and conversational, trying to understand where are those points that we can agree on and moving those points forward. I don't believe that individuals have to focus on their differences and that we have to pick at them and vilify them in order to get, I guess, our point across or things done. My approach is to see people, you know, as wanting to do the right thing. And I think ultimately we want to do the right thing, but maybe the approach could use a different kind of touch.
Thank you. What legislative issue are you most passionate about? What motivates and drives you to public service?
Okay, so I'm passionate about a lot of different things. Working with KIFA, we were keeping tabs on all different kinds of legislation. I mean, feminine hygiene tax, the environmental aspects. So I've learned to have a pulse on as much as I can because going back to some conversations that I heard earlier in the county commission discussion, things are interconnected. There are no isolated issues that don't affect others. And so the thing that I am most passionate about, what draws me to even run for this seat, is the opportunity for innovation and to help prepare Kansas for its incoming iterations. I'm rooted in equity. That's a very big part of the experience that I have as a neighborhood leader, as an educator. My own lived experience has taught me that the responsiveness of the state to the needs of Kansans is critical and has been a missing aspect because we have not done the work of making sure our digital infrastructure is up to date and is able to safely house the information of our Kansas residents, and ultimately working together for the common good. That's really what motivates me to be in this space. And I'm just excited to have the opportunity to possibly get there.
The primary election involves voters needing to choose between deserving Democratic candidates who frequently have similarity in their positions and priorities. What distinguishes you from the other candidate?
I think in this particular space, it's lived experience. It's being the embodiment of nearly 40% of this district's population. It's being the target in many cases of the worst health outcomes in the state of Kansas when you're looking at maternal health and disease. I mean, people of color are right there. Without those conversations, without people who can lead those conversations from a space of lived experience, we are doomed to continue to keep missing the mark. And I believe that our voters in Douglas County and Shawnee County want to start hitting the mark. And that means that we need to look to a different kind of experience and approach in order to get there.
Finally, why are you asking for our votes?
Okay. You know, to me, the answers to a lot of our challenges begin by bringing in the people who are affected most. And if you can't bring in the people who are most affected, you need to bring in people who are willing to go out, have those conversations, pull in that feedback for engagement so that we are making legislation that makes sense. I'm asking for your votes because there are a lot of individuals in District 19 who will never be heard. They cannot participate. They will not participate. And that continues to perpetuate us not being able to respond to the challenges that most affect our Kansas residents, regardless of what their citizenship is, etc. And so I'm asking you to vote, not just for yourselves, but I'm asking you to vote for those who will never get that opportunity, for those who have been consistently ignored. They need you, we need you, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ShaMecha.
I will interject just a brief comment. We are unfortunately not able to present a third candidate for Kansas Senate District 19. And that is Patrick Schmidt. Patrick was invited, but unfortunately had a conflict. We hope to work him into one of the other forums that we will be offering yet before we hit early voting. But do wish to note that he sends his regrets and hopes to meet with us later. Thank you. Go ahead, Wayne.
Thank you, Pat. We're going to move now to our candidate for House District 45, Mike Amyx. My district.
Good evening, Wayne. Thanks for having me this evening.
Please introduce yourself to our audience. As part of your introduction, please share what experiences, education, and expertise help you to do your job in the Kansas legislature.
Well, Wayne, I am a lifelong resident of the city of Orange, Kansas, and Douglas County. I grew up in the country early on, attended Wakarusa Valley School. So I know quite a bit of the county these days and had the opportunity to graduate and from Lawrence High School in 1971. So I was able to get my entire public education in the Lawrence public school system. I've been a business owner in downtown Lawrence for like the last 26 years, the greater part of 26 years, until recently that I was able to, one of the young people that worked for me has stepped up and has bought my wife and I's business, and very proud to look at succession planning as being something that is extremely important in our lives at this day. I served 6 terms on the Lawrence City Commission, and that included 6 terms as mayor. I was a member of the Douglas County Commission from District 2, and I served 2 terms as chair of the County Commission, and 3 terms as finishing my 3rd term as a member of the Kansas House of Representatives, and look forward to serving a fourth term starting in January. I believe that my experience as an elected official has prepared me to continue the work that I do in the Kansas House.
This is a two-part question. Please identify 3 critical issues facing the state of Kansas that the legislature needs to address in the next legislative session. And then in 3 more minutes, rank those 3 issues in importance and explain what each issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Well, as was talked about, our leader a minute ago, as we talked about the funding of public schools and the new formula there, Medicaid expansion and property tax reform or changes in the way that we tax our properties in the state of Kansas, I think those are the 3 that I see as the most important. As I talked to people over the last several years and the work that our leadership did this last session in making sure that our property tax came to the forefront, I will tell you, I believe that that is the number 1 issue as we go forward. I think it is so important because of the people that I talk to in the various parts of my district. It is the number 1 thing that comes up as we're talking at the various functions and work that we're doing in the district. I think that Medicaid expansion, I still think is our number 2 issue, and I could easily switch these around because they probably all deserve a number 1 ranking. But I think it is so selfish to say that we're not going to do Medicaid expansion, because I think it's just our responsibilities as Kansas, making sure that and members of the legislature, that we get this done. There are people that truly need help with healthcare, and by not doing this, I think that we're not doing our job at all. And then the obviously the third point of making sure that we have a new school funding bill. Our public schools are so important to the future of the state of Kansas, the way that we educate our kids, and making sure that we have the ability to pay the best teachers that we can possibly find for the education of our kids. I think that those 3, in the orders that I gave, are pretty important. But like I say, I think that we can change any of those at any time to be in the number 1 slot.
Please tell us about House District 45. And as a follow-up question, what are your district's needs and concerns?
Well, I think, some of the biggest things that we have understand about House District number 45, I think it's one of the oldest, parts of the community because of our county, because I have both Western Lawrence, and I have parts of rural Douglas County, and that includes the city of Lecompton, which was our constitutional capital way back when. And it's something that is something that we should all be very proud of, and work to help with the needs of the Lecompton area and the city of Lecompton. I mean, it's something that is so important to our past and understand where we came from. We have a number of needs in the areas right now, as we see the bid today, I think it was, or yesterday, that came out on the finish of the final 2 legs or 2 lanes of K10 highway. That is something that for the longest time, the entire project was in the 45th district. Redistricting has kind of split a little bit between the 45th and 47th, but it's something that needs to get done for safety. And it's been a project that, quite honestly, has been through the mill for quite a number of years. So it's time to finish and get that done. So there's that. There's quite a bit of diversity in the district, just from the different backgrounds where people come from, and I think that that's something that is important to bring up. We want to make sure that we're able to take care of the needs of folks that find them in a situation where it is maybe sometimes hard to make ends meet, but also make sure that we're able to work with folks that are in a very good situation.
An important goal for Democrats is to break the supermajority Republicans now hold in the legislature. But regardless, there will still be major differences between the parties about what is best for Kansas. Is it possible to find common ground? How can you advance the issues you care about?
I think, yeah, absolutely. There's always opportunity for common ground. And I think that we've been very fortunate to take care of some of those things, but it constantly needs work. We are always looking for people, and we have found through the assistance of and the help of the leadership of the House Democrats, finding people to run for key positions in the House this year. We've got some great candidates coming forward, and I think we will continue to see. I think that we are going to break the supermajority this year, and we will continue to work with our colleagues across the aisle and be able to make good things happen. I mean, you just got to believe, I think.
What legislative issue are you most passionate about, and what motivates and drives you to public service?
As somebody who has spent a lifetime, or at least the adult portion of his life in public service, it is just something that I've just always wanted to do, and I've been so fortunate to be able to be a part of a process, becoming elected in the various levels of government in Lawrence and Douglas County, and now in the state. I don't know. I look at, the number one issue that I believe is property tax, and what are we going to do about that? I think those are the kind of issues and that really push me and make me want to do more to make sure that we're able to help and help people get through this. This is tough. And when you hear people that call you or talk to you, stop you on the street, wherever it may be, and that is one of the first things they bring up. I mean, I think it's something that we absolutely have to take extremely seriously.
Finally, why are you asking for our votes?
Wayne, I ask people for their vote all the time, and one of the reasons that I do it is I think it's so important that we have experienced people that are in the positions right now. I look at the experiences that I've had in the past, again from the city and the county, and now the 6 years that I've served in the House and the various committees I've had the opportunity to serve on, with water, local government, general government budget, and higher education budget. I'd like to continue to work that we've started on those. And I ask people for their vote based on the experiences that I have and the work that's left to be done. So I would appreciate everybody's vote in the August primary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to questions for House candidate, for the candidate for House District number 5, Henry Johns. Henry, I see that you showed up. We were hoping you'd make it. You're muted.
There you go.
There, it worked that time.
Okay.
There you go, beep. Excellent.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to our audience. As part of your introduction, please share what experiences, education, and expertise will help you do your job in the Kansas legislature.
Okay. Well, I'm Henry Johns. I live down by Lone Star in southern part of Douglas County. About 50 years ago, I started working nights in a small hospital in Central Florida so I could pay for a car. And I ended up in the Army as a clinical laboratory specialist. Afterward, I attended the University of Kansas and later Creighton University respiratory therapy program. I have a BS in organizational management. I worked as a licensed therapist in the emergency department and the ICU for many years, as well as pulmonary lab and cardiology labs, before I went into sleep medicine. I went out to Stanford and went to the School of Sleep Medicine and became a polysomnographer. I've worked in both the private sector and the public sector. I spent the last 20 years of my career as a manager in both private practice and at the Veterans Administration before I retired to take it easy and become a substitute teacher in the Baldwin and Lawrence school districts. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I've lived in Douglas County since 1975.
Please identify 3 critical issues facing the state of Kansas that the legislature needs to address in the next legislative session, and then please rank them in order of importance and explain what each issue involves and why you rank them as you did.
Bodily autonomy and healthcare access, property taxes, and funding public education. Bodily autonomy, the right to make decisions about your own body without being cajoled and coerced and intimidated, and having access to the health care you need when you need it. I believe politicians should never come between a medical provider and a patient. And Medicaid expansion is an important part of this healthcare access. Expanding Medicaid to fill the insurance gap and help the working poor. I call them the working poor because you know what? Some of them work 2 or 3 jobs and are single parents. And they do the best they can, but they don't qualify for Medicaid. And their employers don't carry insurance. So what do? They end up going to the emergency room when they're sick or when they have a sick child. And that just creates an astronomical bill that they can't pay. And then the hospital ends up eating it. And that's what has put so many of our institutions in hard financial times. I think we need to incentivize students going into healthcare a little bit and help them choose careers in healthcare. A fair tax plan would be important. One that supports growth and still brings a noticeable relief to Kansans. The LAVTRF, Local Ad Valorem Tax Reduction Fund, is something that's been around. It's been used since the 1930s. And it was very successful until 2003, when the Republican-led legislature cut it off. And it's languished for the past 20 years or so. A bill was introduced to try and refund it this past session, and it failed. That would help put money back into the pockets of the counties and cities, and that would help reduce our property taxes. And that was the whole idea of it to begin with. Tell you, I was a little bit shocked when I got my new property evaluation this year. I think a lot of people were. Ensuring that our public schools are fully funded and our teachers are fairly treated. You know, when I started looking at how our teachers are treated, and I got to know quite a few teachers in the past few years being a substitute, our teachers' retirement plan ranks 35th in the nation. Our Kansas legislators' retirement plan is either 2nd or 4th, depending on which poll you read. And that's terrible. We should be ashamed. We should be ashamed. People in Topeka should be ashamed that they have not funded our schools better than that.
Tell us, please, about House District 5. And as a follow-up question, what are your district's needs and concerns?
Well, House District 5, like a lot of different districts now, since the last census, has been heavily gerrymandered. And it extends across southern Douglas County from about 900 Road south to the county border, over to 59 Highway. Then it drops down to 650 Road all the way across. Includes Baldwin. Then it goes down into Franklin County and picks up Wellsville. Goes over through Edgerton, southern Gardner, a little bit of Olathe, over into Spring Hill and Johnson County, and then all the way down through Miami County to Osawatomie. So it's a large area, and it's very rural. I don't think problems the people have in this district are much different than anybody else. When I started looking at some of this, because of something my opponent said and then did, I started looking into how many children qualified for the free lunch program in the various school districts that are in the 5th House District. And I'll tell you, I was really surprised. I did not expect to see that many children in the Baldwin School District, in the Edgerton School District, in the Osawatomie School District. Maybe I expected it in Osawatomie because it is down in the south of Miami County, and that's kind of a depressed area down there unless you're lucky enough to have a really good job or be in agriculture. And even then it's hard. But there was a huge number of children who meet that free lunch qualification, which is an economic standard that families have to make less than a certain amount for the kids to qualify. So I was pretty shocked at that. And you know, we need growth, we need good jobs, we need tax relief, and something more than just what was just passed. The income tax relief is not quite enough. We need a little extra. We need a little more.
An important goal for Democrats is to break the supermajority that Republicans now hold in the legislature. But regardless, there will still be major differences between the parties about what is best for Kansas. Is it possible to find common ground? And how can you advance the issues you care about?
Well, I believe that as Kansans, there's more that unites us than divides us. It's always possible to find common ground. Sometimes you start with something small, a small conversation that leads to something broader and to a bigger discussion. And part of the key to having those conversations is listening. Everybody has a story. Everybody has needs and desires, and people want to be heard. And by listening to others, you can understand. And if you first seek to understand, then you can find that common ground and move forward. And that's what we need to do.
What legislative issue are you most passionate about? And what motivates and drives you into public service?
Well, I don't know what I'm, the most passionate about. The three things I mentioned are very, very important. But I think something I have to say I'm very passionate about is the issue of women's rights. And some of my best friends are women. And women make up over half of this country. And yet they're still treated like second-class citizens. And there's still a group of male politicians who think they know better what a woman needs than a woman does. I'm passionate about public education because the public schools, I believe, are the foundation of this country. And if we don't have an educated electorate who understands civics and understands how our government works and why it works, they just get led down a path. And we need them to understand. We need them because they are the future of the country. I've been
Finally,
in some form
Go ahead.
public service. You were asking about public service, and I've been in some form of public service for most of my life. And when you ask, how did I get into public service? Well, it was to help others. It was a desire to help others, whether that was working at the bedside in the hospital or working as a manager later for my employees and for the patients, whether that was doing things in the community with the Masonic Lodge or with the American Legion, the things I do with them. It's all to help other people, and not necessarily those less fortunate, but just to help others.
Okay. Finally, why are you asking for our votes?
Hey, my goal is to bring back some common sense and a little bit of heart to the State House. I want to help Kansans thrive. I want to help open doors for people. And so I'm asking for everybody's vote and for their help to move Kansas forward.
Thank you, Henry.
You're welcome.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight. Really good discussions, and thank you again, Wayne, for moderating our panels tonight. We really appreciate it.